And so his nickname was Poochie, right? So we hear, Poochie, what y'all doing out there? And he says, hey, man, he's talking to such he said, act like we looking for some money, okay? So we start going like this. We're looking for some change. Am I dressed okay? You want to put something else on me? I'm fine.
Wonderful. Thank you.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آله وسلم.
All right, inshallah, if we could begin with your childhood.
Childhood? Oh, you want to start like that?
Let's start from the beginning.
Bismillah. Well, I guess I was conceived at some point in my life. It's funny, I've been looking at this thing about the woman boxer in Algeria. And when Free came in about XY chromosomes and looking at different things. But I was born in Southern California, Watts area. But my family's from here in the Bay Area. And I was raised in a Christian family. You know, my mother's family is very Christian. My father my mother's African American, but my father's Japanese and Italian, right? So his mother, my grandmother, is 100% Japanese, and his father, they're 100% Italian. So when I take the DNA test, it's interesting because, you know, I'm actually probably more Japanese genetically as my makeup than anything else. And I say that because I think that as you go through life, genetics play such an important way in how we see stuff. Actually, Islamically, I took all these DNA tests, and it's interesting because it is a tree. Because you get so many things from your parents, but it's like these building blocks from each thing, and it builds a tree, and it's a genetic tree. And I think it's interesting because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran says, I created you in tribes and nations. And one of the words he used for nations and tribes is sha'ab, which means branches, right? And so it's like a tree. And for our DNA, it's like this, I mean, like the ayat in the Quran, it's like this tree that all these branches are humanity, but they all come back to the single person. Our DNA says the same thing. You know, so, but looking at the genetics of it, my father's Japanese and comes from from we can tell from the name and everything, he comes from a tribe, a samurai tribe that unified all of Japan. So I got samurai blood in me. And then what's interesting, in my Italian family, when I did DNA test, they were soldiers who protected the pilgrims on their way to Jerusalem as Christians. And so I say that because when I look at my DNA and how I was always raised in a very religious family. And then my grandfather, my cousins, they were all very, very Christian orientated, went to church all the time. And so because of that, I always had an inclining to God, Allah, you know, God. I was always religious. Probably since I've never not prayed, alhamdulillah, inshallah, keep me that way. I've never not prayed since I was 10 years old, around 10, ever, you know. Before I go to bed, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Lord's Prayer, every time, every night. Come home, messed up, problem, whatever, pray. And I remember because I used to be scared at night, and my mom said, hey, you know, ain't nobody messing with you, so I go home, I'm back to the bedroom. And when I went to the bedroom, what I realized was my only friend was Allah, God. So I talked to him, and so I developed this relationship with God at a very early age. And so then after that, as I got older, I always prayed, but I also like to read a lot. And so by the time I started getting into high school, I started reading like anything and everything in the library, right? And I remember I reading books like, there was one philosophy book called From Plato to Sartre. Like I read, at about 15, 16, I had read almost every top philosopher ever, right? Instead, because I was thinking, I'm praying to God, but I'm always thinking and looking at philosophy and different things of thinking on that end, but at the same time, I always wanted to join the military, which is interesting. Like I was like, my goal was to join the United States Marine Corps and be recon, be the first one out there. So I had this duality of religion and fighting for justice. I mean, this is something that, you know, and at that point, you know, I'm raised in America and my cousins went there. And so as I was going on, I was really, really like pro-American. Like I used to do the pledge to the flag and everything. I used to get it right here at Elstree High School. I was like, everybody stand up, and I would lead the whole school in everything. I wanted to join the military, Marine Corps, right? That was because my father's family, they were military people in the Marine Corps, right? And so, but then I went to UC Berkeley and I was young, And I met some people who started giving me more books, and I started learning about Africa. It was South Africa. The apartheid regime was going on. So I'm like, oh, they're like, nah, man. So I started seeing the negative. I mean, I knew there was already negatives in American society, anyways, being black. You know what I'm saying? But it was only military I could think I'd join. And so then I started realizing more and more about my blackness, African American. And then he sat me down. I call him Uncle John, and he gave me stacks of books like I would read. So I got the what do you call that? Stephen Biko, right? I'm learning about Nelson Mandela, Robert Sobukwe, people like that. Just learning about the whole South African revolutionary tendency. And he was the president of Black students at Berkeley. So my conscience changed. So now I became this, pro-Black revolutionary guy in high school. And I was like, hey, this is what it's about. And I became very, very active. But I still, I was very religious still. So I was going to church. And actually I read books by a guy named Cone who talked about how religion should be used in the fight against apartheid. So I was like, Christians, like, all right, cool. Christians is fighting against injustice. But growing up, the one thing interesting was let me go back one. So that was me moving on, and I started looking at stuff, right? And studying. And I started reading all these books. I got really, really knowledgeable reading and stuff, and I became like this revolution. People there, like just hardcore, man, take on the world revolutionary. I mean, in school, I got in trouble because they asked the question. I remember the teacher said, what should we do about South Africa? And I raised my hand. I said, we should take all the white people, put them in chains, just drown every last one of them. I got in trouble. You know what? I said, hey, man, I'm just ready to just kill all of them, right? You're like, hey, she was like, no. Then I was like, all right, whatever. So, that's how my point of departure was. But I also played basketball, and I was doing stuff actively and everything. But and I had family members who belonged to the Black Panther Party. So I started learning more about those things and stuff like that. Because I guess I was raised conscious, and then I had this spell where I was like, okay, go to get military for like a year, and then I went back to conscious, I should say that, right? But when I look back at it and becoming Muslim, and especially Shia Muslim, right? Being Shia Muslim, you know how you kind of reflect back and ask yourself, what are the things that were signs? So you ask me, I don't want to cry because it's like signs of, I remember one time, and this is talking sidetrack, but when I was in Hausa, Brother Abu Faz from Turkey, we all had to give a talk with Imam Khomeini, right? In Farsi. So he just started crying and crying and crying and didn't talk. And then we start crying in class. We didn't know what we cried about, right? He's crying, and finally he stopped crying. They said, why are we crying about Imam Khomeini? And he said, if it wasn't for Imam Khomeini, I wouldn't have found Imam Ali. And that to me was like the importance of Ali bin Abi Talib, at least. And I'm like sometimes people who convert or come over from Sunni to Shia or become Shia, that love Imam Ali. You know what I'm saying? That wilayat, that energy is just something that it's a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I mean, it really is. So I feel blessed. But I remember when my grandfather passed away, I was crying a lot. I don't cry now. And I had to speak at his funeral. And when I spoke at his funeral, I remember my grandfather, they were really religious. Like they had a Bible and they even had a Bible in somebody I know who was Muslim went to my grandmother's house. He said, they got a Bible in the bathroom. Because, you wouldn't put a Quran in the bathroom. But they had a Bible like in every room there's a Bible. You know what I'm saying? So whatever you're doing, you're going to be religious and read. So whenever there was a problem, he would say, hey, man, let's go to the Bible. So I remember being at his house here in Richmond, and it was the Camp David Accords with, Begin and Sadat. And my grandfather looked like Anwar Sadat, dark-skinned, brown, bald-headed. And so I said, what's going on? This big thing, the Jews in Egypt were making peace and everything. And he said, go get the Bible. And he said, let's get the Bible. So we went through the Bible, and he said this. He said, look, these people are historically from the Bible. I came later to find out some of them aren't, but this is for the sake of discussion, the two people from the Bible, right? So he said, the Jewish people are from Sarah. And so he showed me the Bible, Sarah, right? And he said, Jacob had Isaac from Sarah, and these are the descendants, and they're Jews. He said, he also had another wife from Egypt named Hajar, right? And she had a son named Ishmael. And the Muslims are from Ishmael. She said, and they've been fighting basically, if I remember correct, and they came together. And I'm not lying to you. At that point, when I was a young kid, I said, I'm gonna be a follower of Hajj. I mean, it was just like, when I think about that my grandfather showed me in the Bible, and I was like, yo, man, I'm following the Egyptian lady. And I say it so deep because when I made Hajj, and she's right there, and it's my hair, like, so Hajj to me was just like a phenomenal time because I was also living my biblical life. You know what I'm saying? It just wasn't, it was like my whole, like, wow, this is Hajj and Ismail. These are the people I learned that. So, it was really all encompassing, but that was probably one of the first opportunities that I was like, when I look back at it, that I had this identification with Abraham, Hajar, and Ismail. Nothing against Isaac and Esau, because I love Jesus and the other prophets, but I did have this thing about, so that was like my first introduction unconsciously to Islam. The other one came with Imam Khomeini, rahmatullah, is, and a lot of people know this about African Americans, right? They took the hostages, right? They never took the hostages. A lot of people don't realize they let the black people go and women, right? Imam Khomeini was like, women got children, they need to go back to children. And he said, black people, y'all, why are y'all here? Y'all got problems in America, go home. And for us as black folks, we didn't know what was going on, but anybody let black folks go, he got to be cool. Like, hey, man. So black people like, hey, man, I'm rolling with Imam Khomeini. I mean, we don't think about the dawah that he just did by saying, because those guys were considered spies. They now let them go. Actually, I got it in my book where you can read the actual thing. It's like, so I remember black was like, hey, that guy, it's funny, my auntie, like my godmother, she said, where'd you study? I said, I studied in Iran. She was like, Iran? Iraq? I said, they get confused. I said, Iran. I said, yeah, Ayatollah Khomeini is who? And I showed pictures of the guy with the beard. Oh, he was such a beautiful looking man. Whatever happened to him? This is like about 30 years after he died. And she was like, whatever to that guy? I was like, but there was always this positive influence with that. But, and then I read a philosophy book, right? And so what happened was I started stealing books, right, from the library because I wanted to keep them. So when you would go through the censor, I would have my friend outside, I would throw the books over the censor and everything, right? And they would take the books home and I would read. I had all these books. I just read. And I was religious, very philosophical, very cerebral and everything. And I remember I read another thing. I read this one book and it was about Islam. And they talk about Shia Sunni there, but I really wasn't tripping. And I remember they said the Shia are the ones who follow Ali and the family. And I wasn't even Muslim. I was like, well, yeah, that makes sense. Why would you have, how Prophet Muhammad going to not teach his family deen? You know what I'm saying? So I didn't, like I said, so these are just some logical things that had happened before I even studied Islam. So, I think I knew about. So eventually, I wanted to be religious and I studied and I realized that Protestantism came out of Catholicism. So if I want to be a good Christian, I need to go study Catholicism. And so after graduating high school, I went to New York City and went to a university called St. John's University in Queens for the wrong reason. It was in a rap song. So Run DMC had this song, said, went to St. John's University. So hip hop was like just starting. I was like, oh man, I'm going to St. John's, right? And so I remember I flew out there, and I wanted to be a priest. I'm like, hey, we'll study religion. I got out there and I stayed with a family that was Panamanian. And I don't know if you know, Panamanians could be black, right? And they were talking Spanish. So I'm like, hey man, there's some black people know Spanish. Something ain't right. I'm thinking Mexicans don't know Spanish, right? I'm from West Coast. I'm like, hey. And then they was cooking food. Like, to me, it was weird, right? I feel bad now because I was calling people like, hey man, they got fish with the head on it, man. Who the heck cooks fish with the head? And they had beans and rice and everything. It was all messed up. And then they did something that just blew my mind. I was like, oh my goodness, I gotta go home, right? They fried a banana. Who fries bananas? I said, they frying bananas, man. This is like, and I found out later it's called plantain, you know what I'm saying? It's like a food, I ain't never seen that before. It's like fried bananas. And then the weather was hot. We don't have it, humid. I couldn't breathe. I was sleeping. I'm like, man, this is horrible. So 11 days later, I just got on a plane and came back home before school started. And I enrolled at the community college here, Contra Costa, and went there. Well, my mom went, my father went, my whole family went. And at the community college, I decided, God, I know I believe in you. I've always prayed to you, but I want to make sure, I don't have some ifs about Christianity. Said, I want to make sure I'm doing the right thing. And so I went on a quest to study every major religion in the world. And I had this mindset, Allah, God, it was an Allah. whatever I can destroy in my mind can't be from you because you're greater than me. So I'm going to war until I find the religion that's true. And I read Buddhism, Hinduism, Christianity, Catholicism. I went through, and every time I read the books on Islam, it was boom, knocking me, oh, yeah, I can't get that one. Every question I had, Islam was answering everything. Boom, 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 boom. So I was like, wow. And one of the books I was really reading, it was on Ahl Bayt. So I'm like, oh man, look at this. So I'm looking, and every question was answered. Now bear in mind this though, I tell people this, I found Islam before I found a Muslim. I don't know what a Muslim might have pissed me off or something, you know what I'm saying? I found it, I'm studying, this is me in the library on my own, questioning. And I already believed in God. And simultaneously, I fell in love with Malcolm X. And so Malcolm became this like person who, in my blackness, so I'm discovering religion, I'm discovering Malcolm, I'm discovering my blackness, and I'm taking all these courses in black studies and stuff. So my brain is just like, whoa, 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 and I'm just going. And Malcolm became like this person who was like dynamic. And I tell people, I even talks about Malcolm's autobiography is a journey of stages, if you look at it, right? He goes from being a criminal or a kid who's like, good. And then he goes to the criminal life, which is darkness. And then little by little after he goes to that darkness, he joins the Nation of Islam. So why I say it's like a room. Imagine you're in this room, right? And it's dark, you're criminal. And all of a sudden you see a door with a little light underneath it. You're like, yo, let me go through the next door. So you go through the next door. So Malcolm goes through that door. And it's more lighter than the darkness, right? But it ain't correct, so it's still kind of dark. He sees another door with another light. So he says, I'm gonna go through that door. So finally, when he goes to Mecca, he goes through that door and sees real Islam. So Malcolm's life is like, Allah in the Quran says in Ayat Qudsi, where he says, Allahu alayna amanu yukhrijuhum min az-zulumati ila nur, right? Zulumat is plural, nur is wahid, one, right? So Allah takes you, if you're his wali, from what? Darknesses to light. Malcolm's life is going from darkness through these doors. And so here Malcolm is in this light of the room, finally finding Islam. But Malcolm was blessed with something that I don't know if, I think somebody said on Twitter, Instagram, I saw, Malcolm sees another light under the door of all this light of Islam. And people say, what light could be the light that he went through, a door that was greater light than the greater of Islam? That's the door of Shahada. That's what I'm saying. Like there's a door that we may not go through that. Some people are blessed by Allah to go through another door. So when I looked at Malcolm's life, he achieved the ultimate beauty of returning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like Hussein ibn Ali alayhi salam. You know what I'm saying? By fighting and doing justice. And so I think that when I looked at Malcolm's life, revolutionaryism, it was important. But I tell people all the time, and some English classes do it, if you read Malcolm's chapter on Hajj, right? It's so powerful because I don't know if you guys ever, if anybody, if you go to Hajj, when you go to Hajj, as a Muslim, you already kind of know what you're going to see. Remember, Malcolm did not know nothing he didn't know. So when he gets there, people get in the autobiography, Malcolm gets to Mecca, right? They don't let him in because he hasn't taken Shahada. He has to go back and take Shahada and go in. So when he's writing about the Hajj, right, it's so sincere because he has no preconceived ideas of what Mecca is. And so the oneness, the brotherhood, all those things he sees are so powerful. Like I got a book right here. I'm sorry to move. If you get it. This is the Diary of Malcolm X. And they made very few copies of it, right? But I was able to get one. And it's funny. Look, I got an outline, the industry. Malcolm talks about, he says, afterwards, Muslims from Iran, 3 sons and a daughter, and they gave him cookies and spoke English. So I thought about Tarof and Malcolm. So when Malcolm talks about the white Muslims he meets and everything, it's interesting because, he can do white American, but they were Persians. And they kept offering him food, he said. I'm like, yeah. When they offered the food, I was like, yeah, that was that. So Malcolm became important in my life. And I had a friend of mine who was studying Islam. And one day, on July 4th, right, I pulled over to his house. And for whatever reason, we would say assalamu alaikum to each other, even though we weren't Muslims, right? We know about being Muslims. So I said, assalamu alaikum. And one of Islam. And this guy walks right in front of my car, African-American guy. And I'm like, he says, hey, I said, what's up? He said, you Muslim? I was like, nah, I just, He says, oh, I thought you was the Muslims at the Richmond Auditorium, right? I was like, what? He said, yeah, he said, they paid my bail and got me out of jail, man. So there's a big convention over there. So I got in my car, drove over there, and it was a packed with all these Muslims. I'm like, wow. But I was a little suspicious because one dude was smoking a cigarette. And at that time, I thought cigarettes were haram, right? I was like, man, this dude smoking, a fake Muslim smoking cigarettes in front of the Muslims, right? So I go back and get my friend, Sharif, and I say to him, yo, man, there's some Muslims over here. So we get in the car, we go over there, and we talk to people. And I knew I wanted to be Muslim already. I just didn't know how to become Muslim. And this one brother, Haroon, came out and talked to us. And he said, you'll become Muslim? I said, yeah. And he said, hey, man, take Shahada. And so I took Shahada in the Richmond Auditorium, which is funny because Malcolm X spoke in the Richmond Auditorium. I graduated from the Richmond Auditorium. And so the Richmond Auditorium has always been a special place. So I feel blessed. So I took Shahada, and I was walking on air, like literally. Now, my understanding of Islam was consciousness, revolutionaryism. So there were certain principles I already believed in Islam. And then, my name was Hashim, right? And I chose that name because I wanted an African name, right? And I looked at the book and said, one who crushes and destroys evil. I'm like, oh, that's me. You know what I'm saying? I was like, I didn't even realize it was Bani Hashim. The Prophet says, I'm taking Hashim. So after that, I had to take another name, get a middle name. So, and Allah, please forgive me. I'm just going to share this with them. And I know this is wrong to think this way. It is totally wrong. But I'm a new Muslim. This is my new Muslim's mentality. And I'm an American probably too, born here. So my mind wasn't right. But you'll get the gist of it that my name became Hashim Ali. And how to become Ali? Because I said, whoever the Prophet married his daughter to got to be the best guy in the Jamaat. Because the Prophet would not marry his daughter to a bum. It is not possible. So if he would marry Fatima to Abu Bakr, I'd be Abu Bakr. If it was Uthman, Omar, whatever he married his daughter to, she got to be the best princess in the world. I'm taking that man's name. So I learned about Imam Ali via Fatima Zahra because I was like, shoot, who can be better than her as a woman? So this is my first, like I said, my Shia introduction, not knowing, I don't know who the father of Ali is, but, But then as I became Muslim, then my last name, then I took another name. My name used to be Hashim Ali Jihad Abdul Muntaqim, right? So a friend of mine, brothers, he said, man, why you got this name? He said, you gonna fight everybody, man. You can't have a name. You walking down the street. He said, take jihad. We all fighting jihad. So he said, take the jihad off your name. I'm like, all right, cool. Abdul Muntaqim, man, come on, man. That's too much, man. Take that out. So Hashim Ali. So I was like, I gotta get a last name. And so I took a last name. I said, well, why is Imam Khomeini's name Khomeini? He's from the city of Khomeini. I said, I'm from Richmond, so my last name will be Richmondi. So my name was Hashim Ali. If you meet anybody who know me, they say, I know Richmondi. They're like, yeah, that's Hashim. I'm probably the only person who did that, you know what I'm saying, in the world. And then somebody's like, come on, man, you can't be calling yourself. Richmond is still an English word. So finally, I ended up taking the name Alaudeen. But that's, so just part of my growth was this development and having elder people say, hey, man, don't do this, and just, so that's just the beauty of it. So that's a little bit of my up to Shahada, I guess. So I want to stop, because maybe you got some questions about those things that happened in that part. See, I tell people think, I don't know, people say, you Muslim? I say, yeah. They say, you was in jail? I'm like, why I gotta go to jail? I'm Muslim. What is this? You was in jail? I'm like, no, I wasn't in jail. They're like, oh, you Muslim? Everybody go to jail to be Muslim. I'm like, no. So, no, I don't think I had a struggle because I was on this journey for God. I mean, I always believed in God. I just was trying to find which way to practice and finding this journey and everything. So it never was no struggle because even when I was reading Islamic books, I was like, I'd go home with a headache like, this is incredible.
What were some of the, if you have any stories, some of the, maybe the positive, funny things that you experienced, maybe some of the negatives, some of the... After
Shahada?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going, so, all right. So I'll talk about, because to me, it changed as we went on, right? Yeah. So you'll like this story, right? Can the camera see me if I get on the ground? Here, just hold the camera. Because this is an incredible story. So remember I said I had a friend of mine, right? And he took Shahada finally, right? So we were kind of we didn't know what taqiyya was, but with your mom. So one of the first problems I had was I didn't want my mom to know, right, that I was Muslim. Because it was the time. So I used to pray in the bathroom, right? And one Muslim brother said, you prayed in the bathroom? I was like, yeah. They said, who would pray in the bathroom? In front of the toilet? You must believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you pray. I was like, well, I want to make my mom mad. So I would go and make, on the bathroom because I was trying to, I want to make sure I wanted to obey Allah and not disobey my mother. You know what I'm saying? But I didn't know that if your mother called you, you should go. So I remember one time, my mom came in, knocked me, I was praying, and she hit me and knocked me on the ground and everything. And I'm like, what are you doing? So, just getting my family to understand the transition was, one part. So I had a friend of mine, Sharif, and so he had like similar problem, like, trying to let the family know. So I remember one day, so we go, me and my friend Sharif go, and we want to make salat. So we go in the backyard, right? So in the backyard, and we said, Allahu Akbar, so we down like this and everything, right? And so his nickname was Poochie, right? So we hear, Poochie, what y'all doing out there? And he says, hey, man, he's talking to he said, act like we looking for some money, okay? So we start going like this. We're looking for some change. And, and so we get up, we break the salat. But I say it because, like you said, those are just stories that are just about what Allah in the Quran says one of the most beautiful things. The whole Quran is beautiful. He says to the shaitan says, I'll be on the front, the back, the right, the left, right? And then he says what? What does Allah say to the shaitan and to us to learn? He says, you will not have those who are mukhlis, those who are sincere. You can get the scholar, you can get the rebel, but you can't get the people who's ikhlas, who have sincerity. So those type of stories, it reminds me of the sincerity that we had, that we weren't praying to Allah. Some people are like, man, you can't break your salat, but we were like, we wanted to make sure our parents, and alhamdulillah, by Allah's grace, like my mom and them, like my sister, all her kids got Muslim names. She named her daughter Ali after me. So, I realized that by going through that process of showing the respect to family, you know what I'm saying? It pays off because now all our family members are very pro-Islam and everything. When I first took Shahada, we was mainly around African Americans, right? And then I went to UC Berkeley. And so when I went to UC Berkeley, got transferred, right, in the summer. So I took Shahada July 4th, and then by August, I'm at Cal. And I remember I wanted to fast, like let me do an extra fast day. And I was like, okay. It's funny because one time I was Ayatollah Basja, Rahmatullah, and he said, whenever you teach Islam, make sure you teach the right way, because if you teach the wrong way, you're accountable. And you can't tell somebody about fasting and they end up fasting the wrong way because, it can be dangerous too. I mentioned that because it reminds me of when I first took Shahada, I'm reading books and I didn't know what Sahur was, right? So I got up in July, not realizing the sun stays up longer in July, you know what I'm saying? And I'm trying to fast and I'm dizzy and I'm like seeing three-way and everything. I mean like 3D, the trees. I'm like, why am I dizzy? Because I never fasted before. And so I didn't eat in the morning and I was late. So it's like a 9 o'clock, from 5 in the morning till 9 at night. And I'm like about to pass out. So when I got to Berkeley, like I said, I started taking class on Islam and Arabic. I'm Muslim now, so I took Arabic. And when I took Arabic, I took Islam class with Dr. Hamid Algar, who became, Allah, love him because he's my professor for so many years. And he was like a top professor, right? I mean, he's like pound for pound, like Algar, like awesome. So I studied with him. And I remember I took a class with him, and I had one of the older brothers from the old African-American from the Dar al-Islam movement. He was like, helping me and everything, first become Muslim, older than me. And I remember we're sitting in the class, and we were reading Rumi, who I love now, right? I got his books over here. And I put my head down. I was like, man, what is all this love and flower stuff going on here, man? They're like, it's beautiful. I'm like, yeah, it's beautiful. I couldn't understand what Rumi was talking about at the time. And so I wrote Dr. Agar, who's British. I said, hey, what's your nationality? He's like, I'm white, British. I'm like, you ain't white. He's like, no, I'm white. I'm like, no way. I said, why? I said, you gotta be Turkish, you gotta be something but not white. He's like, I'm a white man. I was like, he says, I was like, well, Islam is awesome because to me, I'd never met a nice white man in my life. So he was Islam made him nice. I was like, he's a nice white man. Like look what Islam has done to the white race, right? It's like, but Malcolm says in autobiography, he says what? He says that, if America would understand Islam, it would, so Islam changes the, I remember I was a new Muslim. So that's when, but remember, he's white. Omar Nuruddin, Allah have mercy on his soul, he was African-American, so I was around those guys, but remember, they both were converts. So, like I was saying, when Juma came, and they're like fifth floor, floor four, I was telling you, I was like, where we go to Juma? So at Berkeley, everybody's protesting everything and out there. So I go and I see an Iranian and he has this Israeli flag on the ground and he has this, I'm like, oh man, what's this dude talking about? So talk to him and then he ended up taking me to Juma and he was like part of the MSA PSG crew. And that's when I went to Juma. And there was, you know, Saudi people on one floor and pro-Iran on the fifth floor. And I started meeting, the Iranians were probably the first immigrants that I met. And they were in Calabria, they were revolutionary and everything. And so I never had, it's funny when I look back at it, my experience with them was positive. I don't think I really had, and the only negative experience I had with immigrants were the Wahhabis. They was just stupid. You know what I'm saying? I mean, makes sense, right? I mean, they would say stuff to me, don't use your brain. I'm like, don't use my brain. Don't know. They said, don't think. I'm like, well, Allah gave me this to torture me or something. Like, I'm gonna give you a brain and don't use it. Like, what is the logic? But they just had this weird logical stuff, right? Don't do this, don't do that. And I was like, I used to argue with them. And then, or the Nation of Islam, one friend said to me, he said, man, it's like arguing with a rock. They ain't gonna listen. Like, you know, I'm like, nah, some rocks have water in them, you know what I'm saying? You know, but so my first immigrant talking was that. But the one immigrant issue that came up the most when I first took Shahada was marriage. So, you know, you think, hey, I'm Muslim, I'm gonna get married, you know what I'm saying? So I'm meeting people, man, ain't nobody gonna marry nobody black. I was like, cause you know, I wasn't used to dealing with Muslims who were racist. I mean, I don't say racist, prejudice, right? And I think that what happened was, as time went on, the students there who are immigrants weren't that way because I realized much of the prejudice you have is through uneducated people. You know, and, you know, those who are educated, they see a tolerant world and they see a lot of differences and stuff like that. But that was at UC Berkeley. So, and the immigrants I was around were all revolutionary. You know, Muhammad Al-Asi, you know, Kaleem Siddiqui, I mean, Imam Jamil Al-Amin. So even the Sunni brothers I was with, and that were in part of the community, it was a mix of Shias and Sunnis together.
They were all in Berkeley.
Well, I would meet them at the conferences. Yeah. That was, you know, so MSA PSG would have a conference, but they would have Sunni and Shia speakers all there. And so I was able to mix and mingle with a lot of the conferences.
He was in Detroit. Was that the imam that was?
Who?
Al-Amin, he was in.
Jamil Al-Amin? No, he was in Atlanta.
Okay.
But he used to work with Masjid Imam Musa's mosque in Oakland. So he would come out here to Masjid al-Islam. And so when I was Shia, but I would go to the Sunni mosque because it was, you know, it's funny. It wasn't immigrant. It was African American. So culturally, I would go to a mosque that was mainly African American and be Shia in that mosque. And so we had a whole crew of Shia African Americans who would just go to the Sunni mosque because they were pro-Shia. So I never went to until I went to Houston IEC, I didn't really go to masajid that had immigrant base. But then when I started going to those places, you know, I started experiencing more prejudice and, you know, racialized mentality, unfortunately, you know. And I hate to say it. I mean, I used to tell people, what's the difference between a Pakistan, Indo-Pak Sunni mosque and a Indo-Pak Shia mosque? Nothing. When it comes to black folks, they treat us the same. They can agree on that. They can't agree on the Vlad of Ali, but they can agree on how to treat us. Like, I mean, they have some special meetings. Okay, when the black people come in, we're gonna treat them like this. So I don't know. You know, I mean, to be honest with you, it's like, I don't know, because there's a certain idea, but I think the thing is, many immigrants who come here, now I'm not gonna say this, like I said, we're talking about years ago. It's a different world now. Young people now are going to high schools, they're immigrating, I mean, and there's more of a, intertwining. When I took Shahada, you know, it's like, you know, we were anomalies, you know what I'm saying? And what happened was there used to be a whole bunch of brothers who became Shia, you know, in a group, but they don't want to, you know, they wouldn't go to the, I would still go, because I like the Malanas and I don't acknowledge, but culturally, even today, there's Lighthouse Mosque, which is a Sunni mosque. Most African-American Shias here are going to go there. You know, we're going to pray with our, and don't nobody care, you put your stomach, ain't nobody tripping, because we all just black folks, so we all kind of like, they consider us like misfit Muslims, I guess. You know, we don't know what we doing. It's like, hey, actually, it's funny. I had my abaya on, and I used to wear my abaya, and I was in Medina, and so you know, I got my rings and stuff and everything. So you know, if you've been to Medina, you can pray on the stone in the back, you know, instead of the carpet. So I'm praying back there, boom. So all of a sudden, the Wahhabi police, they get the little red hats on, they see me. Brother, can we talk with you? Here we go, right? So they get me and everything. And they said, I said, oh man, I'm just praying. I'm knowing, I could tell there's something going on because I had the bio. He says, from Qum, right? Or something around here. He says, come with me. So he takes me to this special like little Wahhabi office, right? Or someplace. So I'm upstairs in Medina at the Prophet's thing. Brother, why are you wearing this ring on this finger? I'm like, oh, somebody gave it to me. And why do you have a black abaya on like this? It's not like the ring. I said, oh, then no, you shouldn't wear the ring on this finger. Put on this finger and don't wear this abaya and everything. Because I'm knowing what's going on. He's like, you dress like a Shia. I was like, hey man, so this is my black taqi, I guess, right? I'm like, man, I'm just a black man. I just became Muslim. I don't know what's going on. Somebody just gave me this stuff. You know what I'm saying? He's like, oh, I'm sorry. So they feel sorry for the black guy. He don't really know. So they take my abaya, take my ring, and then they did me a blessing without knowing it, right? So he walks me out. And when he walks me out, where does he walk me past? Baki. So I made ziyarat to the So I was like, thank you, Mr. Wahhabi, for taking me to Baki Cemetery and everything. So those are the experiences I've happened a lot because people look at us and, even when I used to travel to Iran, my ex-wife was Persian, who I used to go with to Iran. And so sometimes we get in the airport and, hey man, they come here, take a passport and they going through and, man, I tell you, look, I'll put a sweatsuit in the basketball, ain't nobody gonna ask me nothing, man. I walk through the airport, man, like he plays basketball, he's a sports, because the stereotype is so much in the West. But the reason I mention that is because I think many Muslims from overseas, they bought into the stereotype themselves, and so they're treating us based on their image and what they get from the media. But unfortunately, you know what one of the biggest problems is that I noticed? And this is why I was getting angry, but I don't get as angry as much nor because they say things like I got this one Muslim brother, right? So a Muslim, because my position in the community and everything, I work with people. So this one Muslim sister comes to me, and this is, something to talk about. You may not even want to film this, I don't know, right? I mean, play it, right? But because your audience like, don't talk about that, right? So one of the things that a lot of African Americans, and I think you should put what I'm saying on here, right? Because it's important. One of the biggest issues of race deals with marriage. So you got all these converts become Muslims, and they'll go marry somebody who's Muslim, Shia, and everything, but nobody marrying them to their daughters. So what are they supposed to sit around until somebody takes Shahada and become a Shia? No. So what do they practice? Most of the brothers here have muta, right? And they get with their old girlfriend, they get muta with them, and alhamdulillah, the majority of people, brothers I know, who have had muta with some of these, with these women, they've taken Shahada, become Muslim, and they get married. So it's dawah, you know what I'm saying? And we look at like Imam Musa Kazim, right? Many of them had slave women who took Shahada, you know what I'm saying? And they became Muslims. So this concept of being with women like this. And a lot of brothers be like, look, man, I'm not going over there because I don't want to deal with all the overt, they're acting like it's not racism, but oh, brother, you're such a good brother and this, and this, but you can't marry my daughter. So that's one of the biggest ones everybody faces. But I realized a lot of it's lack of knowledge. I had this one Muslim sister, I gave her Shahada, and she was talking to another brother who's Shia, and she's Sunni. She don't know nothing, right? And so she tells me, yeah. He tells me he had muta with her. So I'm like, oh. Did you know how to do it? He said, what you mean? So he said, yeah, I just told her you my muta. Man, I was like, you can't do it like that. It's like, I'm like, are you serious? And she thought so too. Yeah, he told me I'm his muta. So it was like, no. So I said, because if he thought he was doing wrong, he just wouldn't tell me, yeah, I told her, you my muta, let's go. You know what I'm saying? And he's like, no, let me see you some books and stuff. But the sincerity, and sometimes when I talk to people who say things that are racist or come off that way, I recognize that a lot of the Muslims don't even know what they're saying. They are so caught up. But remember this is what I noticed, and Allah knows best. And if anybody Indo-Pac listening to this, I ask them to think about this, right? We all come from some background, I believe. Unfortunately, if we don't purify ourselves, we still have those habits, right? I was in Iran at a wedding. The women was downstairs and they was partying, right? The brothers upstairs, it was boring as heck. Some dude was trying to be funny, right? Doing some comedies. I'm like, what is this, man? Right? The women, you could tell they had their chadors on, but underneath they was ready to go like, hey, we about to have fun at the wedding. So I'm sitting at the wedding board, right? And the lights went out. Then the lights came back on. And everybody said, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I'm like, why would y'all do, what's the point? Why are y'all doing this? Lights go out again. Come back on. Salawat. I'm like, hey man, it's like Salawat. So I start thinking, this must be some old Zoroastrian mentality of fire and light. You know what I'm saying? That the light comes on and stuff. Because everybody got something from their background that they bring, and it may be, you know, a worldly view. So me sometimes after I took Shahada, I still have like Christian stuff. You know, I'm purifying myself from being raised a Christian. I think Indo-Pak people, when I look at them and their history, they come out of a caste system. And I feel that sometimes when they become Muslim, they still have this caste mentality. And so the Brahmin class is the Sayyid class. You know what I'm saying? If you're Sayyid, you're a Brahmin. You know what I'm saying? And they treat them like the Brahmin. And then you go down to the Dravidians, and if you look at some of the way they deal with themselves, you know what I'm saying? It is still this, well, Sayyid can't marry non-Sayyid. I'm like, what are y'all talking about, right? I said, most of the imams' mothers were from Africa. So intermarriage is part of the sunnah of the Ahlul Bayt of the imams. No, only a Sayyid. And I said, one brother said, all right, let me ask you a question. If you Indo-Pak and you Sayyid, how y'all become Pakistani then? What the heck you talking about? Somebody had to intermarry? No, we always been saying. I was like, dude, then you be an Arab, you can't be Pakistani without somebody. But the law is like, it's almost like, it's like this caste system, you know what I'm saying? And so I feel that many of the Muslims, when they find racism and stuff, it depends on the culture you're coming from. And from the Indo-Paks, it's more of a caste mentality than it is to like kill black people. You know, it's just this, we're here. And if you look at like, oh, I'm so-and-so, and yet I think it's so ingrained sometimes in people's mentality that it has to get out. But, you know, we got to remember, Shaitan is the first racist and the first discriminator, right? Because he says he don't bow down to Adam because you made me of this and that. I'm better than him. So, you know, so that's probably some of the the verbal stuff. But most of the time it's subtle, but it pisses you off, I think, because you don't expect that from your brother. Yeah. Now, Haji Firuz, I'm gonna give him a pass because I like Persians. That's something from England, but I tell people, hey man, I saw Haji Firuz, I was like, all right, I'm mad, but what am I gonna do about this? I had a dream. I had a dream. Imam Khomeini, I had multiple dreams with Imam Khomeini, Rahmatullah. And one of them, I was thinking about what to do next after I graduated. I studied Islamic studies, and he left me in his will. He said, so whatever you do, start in Berkeley. So I applied to grad school at Berkeley. And I studied with Dr. Agard, I actually did my master's. And so part of my studying was to go overseas and do more traditional studying. But most of my studying was here in Berkeley, right? And so then when I had that dream, it was part of it. And I'm glad I had that dream because when I got to Qom, I was disappointed, you know. And I was disappointed because I expected it to be more revolutionary. And people reading books. I'm like, yeah, read the books, but what do we mean? And then I got over here too when Imam Khomeini's son Ahmed writes a letter. And after Imam passed away, and he said, the biggest enemy of who Imam Khomeini was, and I got it when I got to Qom. And it's funny, it wasn't Israel, it wasn't the Americans. He said, the backward, stupid pseudo-ulama who keep us backwards, man. I was like, wow. I don't know why we don't do what Imam says and criticize the ulama, because Imam Khomeini was criticizing the ulama because he felt they were the ones keeping the Muslims from the Shia from going forward. You know what I'm saying? And when I got there, I just started seeing a lot of ulama, and like you know, all standing up and everything. I'm in the dojo or something. Like, right? And I was like, okay. I mean, nothing wrong with it, you know. I remember one time, we were in one school, and me and a bunch of Africans, South African brothers, we were together. And so one of the alims walked in, right? And he said, hey, turn the lights out. We like, all right, just, you know, deuces, you know what I'm saying? And then we got in trouble. They said, what happened? They said, he came in, y'all didn't stand up. I was like, come on, man. So I was kind of rebellious. right? So when I was in housing, I had bubble gum. I didn't know, did you not know Persians can't eat bubble gum or something? You're hot tolerant or something like that?
It's frowned on. Yeah.
I didn't know that. So I'm chewing bubble gum. I'm walking through, and he says, Stock fly, brother, come here. You have bubble gum. I was like, so I took it in my mouth and put it in his hand. Now I'm saying the credit, you take the bubble gum, man. So I was the guy who they were like, what? This kid is not, I'm like, man, pissing me off, man. You want the bubble gum so bad, yelling at me, man. I'm 30-something years old. I ain't gonna sit here like, why are you talking to me like this? You know what I'm saying? But I would get in trouble. Like I would jump over the fence at the mast, cause they try to lock us in. So I would jump over I would go out and stuff. But I had a friend of mine who I work with, and we started an organization. He was Iranian, so I would just stay at his house, you know what I'm saying? And go to his house when I was there. And I kind of did like Dars Azad. So I've been able to sit with like Ayatollah Javadi and Muli multiple times and get lessons and talk to them. And so I was really, really soaking it up and getting a lot of knowledge from people who recognize my age and my activity and realize that. So the thing about it, so when you go to Hausa, you start off with Muqaddamat. Why am I doing Muqaddamat? If I didn't do Muqaddamat, I wouldn't take Shahada. Like I don't know, they don't get it. It's like anybody who takes Shahada had to go through some process of understanding what is Tawheed. Some Iranian kid who born Muslim, he may need to find out and understand what Tawheed is, but what are you talking to me about Tawheed for? Or no, but what? So, and I kind of felt like, now if you want to go to some deep, Mullah Sadra stuff and Faith Kashani, okay, we can do that, right? But the fundamentals of, we believe in one God, I'm like, dude, don't you know, most of us took Shahada, we would do that. And so when I was in Iran, my experience in Hausa was mixed. I had good times, I had negative times, but I had more good than bad, obviously, right? But Qum is, as you know, I love Qum. Qum is one of my, somebody asked me if I had to go, what's my favorite city in Iran? I'm like, Qum and Mashhad. Mashhad, we got that with Imam Rida, right? But like, why you like Qum? The water's salty and everything. And it's just, Qum is, I tell people I'm really, for those who've been to Qum, one of the most beautiful things about Qum, cause I like, coming from the West, Arila, I don't know, irony, surrealness. Here's this beautiful city, which historically has always been Shia. People are right, it's always been Shia, right? Fatima Asma. That's my mother. They say, when I got to Qum, they said, this is your mother, Fatima Asma. If you got any problems, just go to your mom and talk. And I would talk to her now, so I'm like, that's mom. And Imam Khomeini is your father. So anytime you got problems, you go talk to your mother and your father, and don't worry about all these other people. They'll be taking care of you, right? So that's what I'm saying. I had some good people, Iranians, like, look, and they knew the Iranians, like, we already know Qum is, you're going to deal with some, like, Dahati mentality, you know what I'm saying? It's not Tehran, So I'm like, all right, cool. But I used to like it because when you come from Tehran in a taxi, right? And you get off the half total time and everything, and you turn, and what's the first thing you see? An amusement park. To me, that's just the most ironic place that you see an amusement park before you walk into this place of spirituality, and then you go to Jam Quran and everything. And so to me, Qum is a beautiful, mysterious place, but I think there's, Imam Khomeini came with Abdul Karim Hyder, you know what I'm saying? From Iraq to Qum, you know what I'm saying? And, Imam's home. My first ziyarat, I remember my first ziyarat, I went to Fatima Sameh, I made dua, I went there, and I came home to my friend's house, to his house, right? And I brought the ziyarat book. He was like, where'd you get that from? I'm like, man, I took it for that. He said, you can't do that. I'm like, what you mean I can't do it? Oh, he's like, man, this ain't Disneyland or something. You gotta take it back. It's a walk. So, oh man, I had to go back and bring back the book and everything. But those little things of Qum and Sohan, even though I can't have it no more, I'll probably break my rule and eat a little share. I eat some Sohan, right? I was like, hey, between Sohan and Gaz, that was my battle and everything. For the Sugatis, which one I like the most. And then the other thing I remember going to is Ayatollah Bahjat. He used to, may Allah mercy, he used to have the, what do you call that? His mosque, you go through the little tunnel and everything around it. And I remember going there for prayer. It's the only place I went to prayer, and everybody was there like 30 minutes before because they wanted to pray behind him. Like that to me was like, oh, what is this? That people are lining up to understand the pray behind an altar. You know what I'm saying? And so most of the time, like I said, I had some bad things, but most of my bad things were with people who lived in Qum who did not understand what was going on. Mainly like that. But I got a whole bunch of Qum stories. I was told to write my notes down in books. I used to write all these things that happened to me in Qum. So I miss it. You made me Diliman Khayli, Khali, I miss it.
Kind of zooming forward into 2024
Uh-huh.
and the direction that we are going as a Muslim community, what do you see as, some of the good, some of the bad? Where do you think we are headed? If you could have some thoughts on
The
that.
Shia community or Muslim community?
Either one, take your pick or both.
In America or in the world?
In America, specifically. And I know it's a heavy question.
No, I think about it all the time. That's why I'm saying that it's not, somebody asked me where would I want to be? And one time I was in Iran, Dr. Kum, and I said, if I lived in Qum, it'd be like living in Medina. Beautiful. I can read, study. He said, Hashim, but where you want to go? What will be my goal in life? Where could I go? And it's funny, we're doing time of, Arbaeen coming up. I said, I want to go to Karbala. I can't let you on saying I want to go to Karbala. America is Karbala. Qum is not. Iran is not. This is Karbala. This is Kullu Yawman Ashukul Ard Karbala. And I say it because this is the place of work of Imam Hussein. This is the place. So yes, where are the Muslims going? I think in America, the Muslims as a whole may not recognize that we are surrounded by Yazidi forces, whether external on TV and everything. And we have to have the faith, the deen, and the strength of Imam Hussein alayhi salam and the companions at Karbala to understand how to live here. I don't think that people are understanding it because I think that when I look from then to now, especially with social media, there is an onslaught of Yazidi mentality. And I'm not talking about killing, physically, killing the soul and the mind in America. This is, if you go to Instagram, every time you flip it, it's just falling apart. What I find amazing though, in this falling apart, where we're going, and then I'll talk about the Shia separately, but as a whole, the Shuhada of Gaza and Philistine have opened this world where you got shahadas happening nonstop. I don't know if the Shia ulama understand what's going on. I've given more shahadas than ever in this short time span to new people who want to find out about Islam. These two girls, one was an internet lady, she got 4 million people following her. She just took shahada. She was like an internet, like crazy girl, And this other girl, I'm like, wow. So I'm texting him like, look, if you need any help, I'll get books or whatever you need, because I think it's my duty to say it. But I think that you also have, this is problematic, a lot of Muslims who are so westernized, you know what I'm saying? That it's cool to be Muslim and drink beer. It's cool to be Muslim and it's cool to be Muslim and do the haram. So a lot of immigrant Muslims are finding it cool to be Muslim because it's acceptable, but it's okay to do haram. The convert Muslims are coming in, and unfortunately, many of them are meeting the non-practicing Muslims like, all right, we just Muslims. And so Islam is not a fad, but there is a phenomenon going on, right? One of the things that I deal with, and I see it more now, and as you see, I'll talk about controversial issues because this is the reality, right? I'm at the one mosque, kid comes in, young man comes in with his father, pink fingernails, dressed like a woman, but it's a man, right? And he want to take shahada, right? Give him shahada. His father said, yeah, my son's just confused about his gender and everything, and he thinks Islam is going to help him. There's so many people who are taking shahada now who are coming out of homosexuality or identity issues and stuff like that. I do not think, because they weren't prepared before, I don't think a lot of the ulama who are Shia and stuff are prepared for that. And prepared to say, okay, Allah has, you cool with Allah. But you talk about racism, now we're dealing with people who are judging people like I had one brother say, oh man, she used to be gay, I would never talk to her. I'm like, dude, these are, this is the people who they're coming because, remember, I realize that a lot of homosexuality and gender issues, this generation is not like 30 years ago. They're making a choice. So to them, choosing to be with a guy or girl is not like, hey, I grew up and this was something that you just do. Or I want to be a trans, or I want to be this, I want to be that. So a lot of the young people, going through those things are another phase in their life from that zulumat to darkness to light. We have to go and say, if we're going to go someplace, how do we prepare ourselves for the coming of people who may have done things or did things that we think is disgusting, but they did it in jahili, in a state of ignorance. Now, the Sunnah, the Prophet and stuff is there, but I don't know if a lot of the immigrant imams or ulama, are they prepared for that, because, but the Prophet, there's a hadith, remember Shaykh Hashim Alaudeen, if there's one for Shia, I never heard, but he said the concept is there, where one of the brothers, Sheikh Hamza, Shia brother in LA, I went to his house and dude was over there drinking beer. Somebody was smoking cocaine. You said cocaine there it is over there, but they was there. And he gave shahada to everybody in the building. And they up there doing haram. He said, man, Prophet Muhammad said, come as you are. I'm like, wow. I don't know if we have that mentality to give shahada to people and come as you are. Like, you're not going to be perfect, but the shahada is the first step towards going to Allah. So are we prepared for that? I don't think so with the ulama who are from overseas, but I think there's new ulama, like, I don't know if you know Sayyid Ali Tawfiqi, right? Awesome cat. I think he's prepared for it. Ali Jaffari, I think he's prepared for it, right? Trent Carr, I think he's prepared. So I think there's a younger generation of ulama in their 30s who are prepared for it because they're coming out of that. And I think their tolerance level of understanding of like, look, this is the job. Our job is to teach al-Islam. So I think that like another thing I told people, Shahi Baheshti, Shahi Mutahari, Shahi Bohanar, right? Imam Khomeini, Rasvan Jani, Sayyid Ali Khamenei, right? You don't realize that all of them were together. It wasn't like, Khamenei's like, man, I'm gonna go get my masjid over in Adi Ashad. And, Mutahari's like, well, I'm gonna do my masjid over in Pastalan. It's like, what are you talking about? Come on. Like, they work together. We don't have the mentality in America where ulama should come together and say, hey, man, let's go to one city and we're gonna have a bunch of ulama. Let's collectively work together to build it instead of having mass. I don't mind masjids in different places, but I think inshallah soon there will be a collectiveness of scholars who say, let's come together, let's work, let's build, and it's going to be mixed with people who are born and raised Muslim and everything. So I'm hopeful and believe it's going to happen because Imam Zaman Ajada Farajahum, this is his movement is this, right? But with the current climate, with the current election coming up and everything, with Trent, with the current problem in Palestine and everything, Allah has a plan, and I see beautiful things because I see people come to the religion, right? I see consciousness. I'll give you an example. I've been asked at Sunni mosque to go talk about Iran and Shiism, which you never could have thought about before. Like, hey, we want to learn about Iran, so this is crazy. Since Gaza. I'm saying Gaza, like the shuhada, like Netanyahu's so stupid. He doesn't realize that the more shuhada you make, all you're doing is, Allah says, do not say those who are killing the way of Allah are dead, but they're living, you perceive it not. Man, these souls could be talking to people all over the world right now saying, hey, and they'll turn around and be like, yo, man. And if they're not taking shahada, they're pro-Muslim. They're pro, like, hey, man, like Netanyahu said, they are gays, trans for Gaza, Palestine. You know what I'm saying? Where's this coming from? Because the human nature, the fitra of the human nature, they know this is wrong. So inshallah, I believe that there's going to be a big future, but definitely there's a paradigm shift right now going on in the world.
Any final?
I didn't share no serious stories because the camera's on.
Feel free. If you like.
No. I got a whole interesting life though. I just want to make sure whatever you guys need, because I don't know.
What makes you hopeful?
Hopeful? Allahumma kun li waliyaka hujjatul ibn Hassan. Imam Mahdi, I have a special place in my heart for Imam Zaman, right? And somebody asked me if I can go any place in the world, right? If I can go meet someplace. I haven't been to Karbala yet. Inshallah, Imam Hussein invite me, I can go there. Maybe I haven't been the best Muslim to go there. But my son's name is Yahya. Actually, his name is Yahya Hussein. Muhayyiddin ibn al-Hashimi. So it's al-Hashimi because his mother said, and my name was Hashim, so Hashimi is like cool, right? Muhyiddin, like Ibn Arabi, right? Give life to religion, right? He don't know nothing but, man, why my name so long? I said, Yahya Hussein. He said, why is his name Yahya Hussein? Because I loved John the Baptist when I was a Christian, right? Think about it. John the Baptist baptized Jesus. You got to be hecka cool to baptize Jesus. You know what I'm saying? So I was like, John the Baptist was like awesome. But how did John the Baptist die? Had his head cut off. And Imam Hussein had his head cut off. I said, son, I gave you a beautiful name of two people who lost their heads in shahada. But he like, hey man, I don't know. Yahya Hussein, that is like the name of life. Yahya means life. Hussein, beauty. The beauty of life is shahadat. So I say that because you said, what gives me that hope? I've always wanted to go, because my Christian background too, Quds. Like Quds to me is like, like I want to go to Quds. I want to, what do you call that? It's just, I want to pray at the Holy of Holies. I mean, there's so many places I want to pray there. And so I always hope, inshallah, the hope is Isa alayhi salam returns and I can go, even if I die, Raja, I come back and I'm good enough to go fly on one of them clouds, right? And be with Imam Mahdi alayhi salam and see the advent. I mean, to me, I remember one alim said this one time, he had a tattoo around his neck like a dotted line, right? And they asked, why you got the dotted line? He said, 'cause they say, Imam Mahdi's gonna kill ulama. Like, hey man, he said, so if he got to kill me, I was gonna, hey man, here, I'll make it easy for you, But you think about, I think I was getting for him, like, but even if he was to kill me, for my eyes to see the Imam of the age, oh my God, yeah, hey, gosh, I mean, it's like, hey man, like I gotta go, but Allah let me see the man who brings that hope to humanity, Christian, Jew, whatever you are. Imam Zaman alayhi salam, this is, the Imam of the age, and he is the hope of Ahl Bayt. He is the hope that Allah gave us. And I just think that, I talked to somebody the other day about wilayat, right? I said, look, to me, if I'm doing dawah to somebody, vilayat is this. This is about vilayat. Because the vilayat of Ali is the vilayat of Imam Hussein. And the vilayat of Imam Hussein is the vilayat of Imam Mahdi. I mean, this is vilayat. And so to me, when I get down, I feel depressed and I feel stuff, right? I have no doubt in my heart, my mind, of the reality of Imam Mahdi Ajala Farajim coming. And I think that actually some of the things that are happening today in the world, obviously everything, but I do see signs, that I believe are preparing. And this may sound interesting. One of them that I think is the unity of Shias and Sunnis in the Gaza issue. I really see this is like, okay, wow, what's going on? Two, some of the Azadari I've been seeing in Africa and everything, like, hey man, like, hey, what's going on? Like I used to tell people, like, I do gang intervention in LA. And so I work with like some real Crips and Bloods and stuff like that. And one time they got Crip walking, right? When they do their dance, right? Bloods got they walk, the Hoover Stomp. So you got all these different dances. So I always look and I tell some of the sheep, to ulama, I say, look, man, they don't see it. When I see them at a funeral and they doing they dancing and they smoking and they dancing and everything, because they lost their comrade or they friend and they set, I say, how do we change that to Azadari? I mean, we're not thinking, you say, so to me, the hope is young people say, hey, when I see that, I'm like, this is their way of expressing their grief and they're moving and they have a sound to it, right? So how do we see, say, hey man, let me show you how the Shia Muslims grieve. I gave a talk to this one group and the little sister was there and her friend, one of her students had just committed suicide. And she's like, I don't know how to grieve. I don't know how to cry. I don't know how to do it. What I do, I'm Muslim, I gave her Shahada that same day. And she is like, I just talked to Imam Hussein. I remember this one, I don't you ever see this movie called One Cube of Sugar? It's a Persian movie, beautiful, right? So, and the scene to me is like mind-boggling, right? The girls and sisters and they're preparing for a wedding, right? And so everybody's happy, everybody's happy. Oh, it's a wedding, right? And then grandpa or uncle, he flips up a sugar and he goes down his throat, right? And he dies, right? He chokes on it. So, as you know, in Persian culture, you got to go from wedding to marasam funeral. So now the whole families are there for the wedding, so they got to switch over. But his sister, somebody couldn't cry. She was just too shocked and she could not cry. And so the one, everybody got an alim in their family. The one alim was like, hey man, go, what are you gonna do? Go talk to her and make her cry. And she was, I'm not crying. And so she was there. And so this is such a touchy scene because this is what I say when I think of Persian culture, how something the Farhanga Imam was saying is so powerful, right? She couldn't cry. They had to make her cry to get the stress off. And so the one guy goes in the family who had a beautiful voice, and he's sitting on one end of the wall, she's on the other end, and what does he do? He sings a Know How Free Mama Sing, it makes her cry. Just to break it out. And I'm like, yo, like that culture of Ashura is so powerful. Not to share that to the world, it's like, I don't know if people understand what it's like, when do Iranians and Pakistanis wake up and say, Allah bless me to be a follower of Ahlul Bayt until Imam Hussein? How do we transform the culture of Ashura, the morning of Imam Hussein, the morning of understanding State of Shahada? How do we translate that in that, remember I said the culture. So wearing the blackest culture, right? Going to the Hayat, I mean, Hayat, in that. Like black people and Mexicans, they already do that. But it's not for Imam Hussein. So my hope is when I see that the Muzazafin and the regular people of the world, their fitra is one thing, and they're just confused by all the foolishness coming on. But when do we take our wazifa and go and say, you know what though? Instead of us doing a jalous and hitting ourselves, we're going to tell somebody, hey, check this out. Let me tell you about Imam Hussein, alayhi salam. This is a beautiful story, I'll tell you. Have you ever seen that picture of Zul Janan and all the women with Chador? Yeah. So I was in Iran one time, so I got the picture. Like, oh, this is cool. So I roll it up. And then I had another thing with some calligraphy with, Imam Hussein's name on it. So I'll roll it up. But you know what happens when you roll it up, you get back home, it's what? You open it up, it keeps rolling back. So I was in Berkeley, and there's a place where they could take it and they spread it out and they mat it on a piece of wood. So when they mat it on a piece of wood, you can put it on the wall. So I go there, I can say I'm gonna pay the money, I don't care, get these two things. I love the picture, get it matted. So it gets matted, and they call me a couple weeks later, come pick it up. So I go pick it up, and they wanna show it to you before they give it to you, right? So they go there, and these two older white women, right? They open it up, show me, I'm like, oh, this is beautiful, it looks nice. And so they say, what is it? And I'm like, oh, just, some religious stuff. And I grab it and I'm leaving. And then alhamdulillah, I must have some angel says like, think about Surat Abasa. You know what I'm saying? When there's some, where the person frowned, you know what I'm saying? They said, man, let me go back and tell them. So I go back, I said, let me explain this to you. And I'm trying to think, how do you explain to two older white women about this? And this is right after 9/11. I remember I said to them, I said, because, a point of, that for them to know. I said, you guys remember 9/11? They said, yeah, it's horrible, right? I said, if the man who was on that horse was never killed, 9/11 would never happen. He is the savior. He is what Islam is, not the other stuff. But he represented true Islam, and I go on and I tell a short story about Imam Hussein and everything, and what do they start doing? They start crying. They're like, yeah. I mean, because anybody who knows the story in your heart, you're like, yo, we don't know about this. We don't know about that. And they're like, wow, that's an incredible story. And so to me, even when I talk to Sunni brothers and stuff, I was like, man, let's just go to Karbala, man. You gonna debate me about the Saqifa. I don't know why we're doing it, but man, look, this is Bani Hashim. What do we look at, right? When I talk to women, I was talking to somebody, because in Iran, I was with people who were like, people who went to war. Let's say that, right? And we were all together, me and my friend Alam, and I said this though. So I asked people who went to war in Iran, against Saddam and everything. I said, other than Imam Hussein, alayhi salam, who do you love the most? Like, who is your person you identify with? And who do you think most of the soldiers said? Abu Faz, right? But me, who do I say? Zainab. Because Zainab is the continuation of Vilayat. You see what I mean? Like to me, she, think about this, when Imam Zayd al-Din can't do it, this woman becomes this person that is the leader. Yeah, Ahl Kufa, you know what I'm saying? Her speech, and so when I'm doing dawah to women, Zainab is like, oh, wait a minute. Like, here's this woman who's single and she's strong and everything. Like we had, she's Fatima, she's Zainab, the beauty of her father. So with the Ahl Bayt, we have so many role models of hope and strength and everything that that's where I feel, I hope that's a good question though. Where's the hope come from? Allah obviously is the hope, but that the rope, hang on to the rope of Allah, right? The rope of Vilayat. And I'll say this, just be honest. Even though a lot of Iranians, say most, I don't know, kids people, most don't understand what they have. The Islamic Republic of Iran, especially now, people who don't even know nothing love Iran. I got non-Muslims. Man, why don't Iran just keep blowing them up? Yo, man, like you got more non-Muslims pushing Iran to war than the Muslims. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like the world is just like, it's a different paradigm. And young people, I think, are looking for a spiritual path, inshallah, we can do our job and spread it to them. Maybe hopefully videos like this will be something that people can look at and everything.